Hey everybody. Well, you saw my last two videos. I didn't get a lot accomplished because I haven't been feeling well, but feeling a lot better. Gonna get back to on the Mustang. First, I'm gonna start with cleaning up the surface here on the intake for the water neck, and get that put back together. I'm gonna stuff a couple of rags up inside the hole there to help catch any trash and anything that comes off on cleaning it. So I can just grab the rags, and hopefully all the trash that might fall in there will come right out with the rags. And get the water neck put back on. The thermostat, can't forget the thermostat. You gotta make sure to put that with it. And the new water neck's up there in that box. This is the old one, and as I showed in my last video, it's in pretty bad shape. Make a pencil holder out of it. Give me a piece of wood, bolt it to a piece of wood, and there we go, pencil holder. So, I don't know, I'll just throw it on the shelf, you never know. I'll find some use for it. But, this new one, it's actually better than I thought it was going to be, because the way all the surfaces have been machined. It's aluminum. It's not this nasty old pot metal. It's a lot heavier, I can tell. This is all aluminum. It's even been machined here on this surface, so the hose will make a good seal around it. So this one will do everything I need to, a whole lot better than that one did. It is the exact same thing. Just got to drill this hole out here, this bolt hole, to fit that other bolt. As I said in my last video, it appears that that top bolt hole was stripped out and somebody has drilled and tapped it to a larger bolt. So I'll drill that out. It shouldn't be too much trouble since there's already a hole there. The larger drill bit should center itself in the hole. As long as I take it slow and easy, it should be fine. If I get a good sharp bit, it should center itself and work out just right. So, let me get you guys up here closer so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got to clean this surface up here. So I'm going to pull this vacuum advance hose loose so I can get to it a little easier. All right. And just lay that over out of the way. And these wires, stick them up there like that. Now then, I should be able to get to that to clean it up pretty well. And I want to stuff a rag up to this side on the back side of this bypass hole. Just to catch any trash that could possibly fall in there. I want to keep as much trash out of this engine as I can. Actually, one rag looks like it's going to do it, I believe. Before I pull the rag out, I can take the shop vac, suction it out real good. But that should keep all my trash from getting into the coolant. Probably wouldn't hurt if a little bit got in there, but I'd rather keep as much out as I can. Alright, now then, just got to scrape that surface. Now I don't have one of them high dollar gasket scrapers. I just got an old putty knife. And really, as long as it's got a good edge on it, that's all you need. The gasket sealer, gasket maker, whatever you want to call it, RTV, whatever you want to call it, ultra black, ultra gray, or whatever you want to use. whichever's best. I'll have to check and see. But your gasket sealer, it'll seal it up pretty well. And it should clean up pretty good, pretty easily. Because it don't look like it had any gasket sealer on it. It just had the gasket in there. Which you can do that, and you can get lucky sometimes and it'll seal. But I'm going to use some gasket sealer just to be sure. Just want to be sure. This is aluminum here. This one's not cast iron. A lot of them are cast iron. Most stock ones are cast iron. This one's aluminum. So you want to be sure you don't dig in and gouge and scratch any more than you keep from it. Because it'll make imperfection in the surface and it will make it more prone to leak if the gouge and scratches are bad enough. But normally gasket sealer will seal those up too. It don't look too bad. Now if I take some fine sandpaper and lightly rub it evenly, it'll clean it up real good. Okay. This is just some 220 grit sandpaper. It's actually a sanding pad for orbital sander or DA sander. But it'll work for this. Okay. Okay, I didn't get too much trash in there. There wasn't a lot left on there. It looks pretty good. Okay, well, it's been a couple days since I cleaned this up. Had some other stuff come up, so I had to step away from it for a couple days. But we're ready to see if we can get this water neck on. Now I've already cleaned this. I'm just going to kind of wipe any loose dust that might have accumulated or that I might have forgotten to wipe off when I was working on it a couple days ago. Now, I've already drilled out this hole here. Need to see if I can knock that burr off there. It's got just a little bit of an edge right there, but that's not a problem. And I enlarged the hole in the gasket too, so won't have any problems with the bolt going through. And it's like it's not centered with this hole, but once I put it on there and line it up, it does go to the edge of it. It's just kind of an illusion because it's kind of off center and it's a larger hole. But if you look right there, you can see it does go all the way up to the edge of the hole. So that shouldn't be a problem. Now, I've got some ultra gray RTV I'm going to use. Ultra gray is supposed to be good for all types of fluids. It's got a wide enough temperature range where it shouldn't be a problem. I think it's like up to 400 degrees. So shouldn't have any issues with that. Different colors and types of RTV are meant for different parts of the engine. But the gray, it covers most applications on the engine. So I'm gonna clean this burr up in here first thing before I forget. Then I'm gonna put on my little gloves and get the ultra gray smeared on this really good. Get it put up there and get the bolts run up, get them snug. We'll let it set for a while. Let that RTV set up a little bit. Let that ultra gray set up. And we'll snug it down. And I'm gonna put some blue Loctite thread locker in these bolt holes. Just be sure they won't back out or get loose or anything, which they shouldn't anyways, but a little extra precaution never hurt. Okay. Believe that it's gonna do it. Okay. I'll go ahead and get this hose put on there. I peeled the label off of it just because that was it flapping like that. I mean, didn't have to, but I'm going to have to trim this down anyways. So, okay, I got to trim that down. And this here, both sides of it got to be trimmed. Just make a mark on it with my thumbnail. So you see it right there. Now these are pipe cutters, like PVC cutters, but they work pretty good for cutting hoses too. Just like that. Cuts it off fairly straight even. Just press, make a good mark with my thumbnail, just enough where I can see it. Put the blade. There. Just like that. So this is bypass hose they had on here. And you see how it's about kinked. I've got some new clamps, but these old ones like this, they don't make these anymore. And these are good and strong. They'll be just fine. So we'll pull them off and we'll reuse them on this new piece. And when you're putting clamps on, you want to look, see which way you need to turn them. I think this one will be best this way. I could flip it over, put it like that, but that might interfere with the upper radiator hose. So I'm gonna put it like this, point the screw out that way. So shouldn't have any issues there. Now the top one, I've got a little more room to play with on that. So I think I'll put it on this way, so that way it'll be on this side. Put the bottom end on first. Get it started anyways, then get the top one started. There it goes. There goes the bottom one. There where it needs to be. And it's on there, and looks pretty good. Okay. Now this plug, before I fill up the coolant, I'm going to take this plug out, put some Teflon tape around the threads, and then tighten it back up and make sure that's sealed. And this right here is pipe thread seal tape. It's Teflon. My dad was a plumber for years. he always called it Teflon tape. I've always called it Teflon tape. Now, when you're putting this on, you want to put it on to the threads. You want to turn the threads the direction they go in as you're wrapping it on here. And that way, when you go to put it in and tighten it up, it's not going to push the tape off. You're not wrapping it backwards. Now, if you got left-handed threads, you want to do it the other way. These are regular right-handed threads. Just 1-2 rounds, really all it needs. You don't want it too thick. And it pulls and snaps real easy. So now that I've wrapped it around this way, when you go to tighten it up, it'll help keep the Teflon tape in place. If I wrapped it the other way, when you go to tighten it up, the end will get caught and it'll bunch up and may come off or leak. So this way, it's going to work a lot better, go in a lot easier, and make a better seal. It's good and snug. You gotta be super tight. That should be good. Now, it doesn't have to be super tight for 2 reasons. This is a pipe thread. Pipe threads are tapered. The tighter you get it, the more it presses outwards on the threads, and the tighter you get it, the more it seals. So that's one reason you don't have to get them super tight. Another reason is cooling systems don't hold much pressure. First fail point in the cooling system is going to be your radiator cap. This one's going to be a 13-pound. Some of these newer cars, it may be different, maybe higher, I don't know. These older ones, 13 pounds is about the highest pressure you're going to see on a radiator cap. And that's going to be your failure point if you overheat. When it blows out there, then park it, shut the engine off. But some radiator caps are as little as 8 pounds. I think some of them are like 6 pounds. So there's not a lot of pressure on your cooling system. So all these parts don't have to be super tight. And I'm going to wait about putting the top radiator hose on, because to run the probe for my thermostat temperature control that came with this relay, not this thermostat, but it comes with an adjustable temperature control, which is basically a thermostat. And it goes with the relay system for the electric fan. So I'm going to wait about putting the top radiator hose on, because I may have to pull the shroud loose and lay it back so I can run the probe from the thermostat to the radiator. And if I put the top radiator hose on now, it's going to be in the way of moving the shroud. So we'll wait about that. Scratch my head and do some thinking, and figure out how I want to run this probe. Because the probe just slides in between the fins, and nothing really to keep it from coming back out. So I think if I run it in from this side, the shroud will keep it from coming back out this way. And in the corners of the shroud, right there, See, it's got a little gap. And I should be able to run this wire that comes from the probe to the thermostat through that gap. I need to see how long this wire is, how far it'll reach, because I don't really want any excess out here. All I gotta do is uncoil this and string it out across. I'm gonna mount my thermostat and relay and everything over there in that big empty space. I was wanting to mount it over here, but there's so much other stuff over here. The battery fits in here pretty tight. There's not a lot of room because of the battery. Starter, solenoid, and the voltage regulator are there in the way. So if I put it over here, all I got to do is run one wire over to the battery, I think. So I'll double check everything before I commit to it. And this relay kit, got it off of eBay, and it didn't come with instructions. The radiator, electric fan, relay kit, none of it came with instructions. The radiator and the electric fan are pretty much self-explanatory. I mean, you bolt them up, hook everything to them. The fan, it's got two wires, blue and a black, and I'm pretty sure the blue is your positive. I'll test them before I hook everything up, but none of this came with instructions. Main thing I needed instructions for was a relay kit. It didn't come with them, but on the listing on eBay, they had a picture, this picture here. So I screenshot this picture and I printed it out, and it's pretty simple. Just your fan's got your ground. Now this says red wire, but this one's got a blue and a black wire. So I'm assuming blue is going to be your positive here in place of the red. Now that goes into the relay, and then your relay has a black wire that comes out for a ground. Then your relay has a wire comes out here, says it's a red wire. It goes into this circuit breaker, which it came with. It's right here. And then circuit breaker goes to the positive terminal on the battery. Okay, then you have a wire here, a maroon wire, it says. It goes to ignition switch out of the thermostat. And then this wire here goes from your thermostat to the relay. So 4 wires come out of the relay. Ground, your positive for your fan, your positive to the circuit breaker to the battery, and then your other wire, it doesn't say here what color it is, but it comes out, goes into the center pin on the thermostat. The thermostat has the wire comes out, goes to the ignition switch. It says it's a maroon wire. So it should be pretty well self-explanatory. And I'll just have to find a wire to tie into that goes to the ignition switch. Okay, well, I've looked it over. I think I'm going to mount my temperature control and my relay, everything over here. And I've just got to punch some holes, mount it in here, and 3 screws should be plenty strong enough to hold the temperature control in place. So one of them, I'm going to mount my wiring harness for my relay on one of those. So I won't have to drill an extra hole, and when the relay plugs in, it plugs in like this, So it'll have plenty of clearance here for the head of the bolt above it. So that's what we're going to do here. Okay, well, I don't know why it wasn't taking video, but use 1/8 drill bit to pre-drill my holes for these screws here to mount this bracket on here. Then this control bolts on with 2 screws. You put your control in here, put the stem through the center, and then your faceplate here. You run your screws through the faceplate, through the bracket, and then into the screw holes in the top of the control module. And I've got it where your reference point is at the top. So all I have to do is just adjust it to where I want it to kick on and off at. I'm going to set it to about 197, 198. It has a 15-degree difference between where it kicks in and where it kicks out. So with a 180-degree temperature thermostat, I'm going to keep the thermostat open. So I'll set it to about 197, 198. That way, when it reaches that temperature, it'll kick on. 15 degrees cooler will be about 182 to 183, and it should keep the thermostat open and should keep the coolant flowing. I'm going to mount the electrode in the radiator as close as I can, right underneath the upper water neck where the coolant returns from the engine into the radiator, because that's going to be the first point where the coolant from the engine comes in contact with the radiator, and you'll get a more accurate response from your fan, and it will be more accurate here about telling where your temperature at your engine is at. If you understand that. It's hard to put in words for me. A lot of people can do this and put this stuff in words just like they're reading it from a book. I can't do that. But I get my point across. As long as you mount it anywhere close to the top, as close to the top of the radiator as you can in the fins, it will be close enough. But if you put it right underneath where the coolant comes in the radiator from the engine, you'll have a faster response from your relays. Okay. So I was thinking about pulling the shroud loose and mounting the probe in from this side, but I think it'll be fine if I mount it in from the front. That way I don't have to pull the shroud off. I've got plenty of length here for this electrode to be able to do that. Now, the water neck comes in right here. So this row right here, between these two upright tubes, or flues as I call them, is about center of the return on the radiator from the engine. Should do it. And this wire should hold it in place. There's a tube going across up at the top, so that's why I had to drop it down a little bit. That's right below the return from the engine, so should get a pretty good reading right there. Now then, I've just got to run this wire up, take up some of the slack, keep it from rubbing. Alright. Now, like I said before, I'm just going to run this screw that mounts the harness here through this bottom corner of this bracket, so I don't have to drill another hole. It should be fine. Now, I don't want to tighten this one too tight, or it will break this plastic on this harness here. Okay, should be good right there. Okay, now my circuit breaker here, I was planning to put it over close to the battery, but I think I might just put it over here. Alright, I want to show you guys how I'm doing this soldering here. I've already got a bunch of wires soldered. Didn't video it because I wanted to listen to music while I was working, and you know how YouTube is about music. So, show you real quick on this wire. It's a ground wire. I had it wired up already, but it was a little bit too long, and it didn't want to fit in my fan harness here too good. So first, I'm going to put down something to help protect anything else from getting hot solder dripped on it. This wire is stiff enough to where I can bend it to where it's pointing where I need it to. And so I'm going to solder this end. A lot of these ends I just crimped. I crimped them really good. I've got a good crimping tool, so they should be fine. But the main ones, like my power supply for my battery and my ground here, I soldered the ends on them, so I'd be sure they would hold and make good connection. Now I'm using 10 gauge wire here. It's heavier than what I needed for this relay, but I wanted a heavier gauge in case I want to pull 12 volts from the circuit breaker here. So if I add something else, I want to pull 12 volts, I can pull it from right here, and I won't have to run another wire somewhere else. And I went ahead, and it seems to be getting a good ground in the firewall, but I went ahead and run another 10 gauge ground wire straight to the battery, so I'll be sure to have a good ground here. And show you here my positive wire. I run up here and just tie it in the solenoid right here where the battery cable goes on. Now it may not look like it, but I did sand this and clean it real good, so it's making good connection. And the ground wire I run and zip tied up the battery cable. Put a new end on the cable and tightened it down there. You see how that little bit of plastic there is melted? That's from where I soldered that end on. I've got it zip tied to the cable, plenty of movement, so that's all good. And I took some of this here wire loom or sheath or whatever you want to call it. I had some of that, and I run it through the firewall where the wiring harness for the headlights run. Run it through the firewall, comes out under the battery, goes across. I even put it in the clips here supplied with the car, and I zip tied it to hold it in those clips, and run it across and back through the firewall over here, and then up here to my circuit breaker. So now I have a good 12 volt positive and a good ground run over to this side. So, and it's Like I said, it's 10 gauge wire, heavier than what I needed in case I wanted to pull 12 volts for another accessory or something on this side. So this is the ground wire going to my fan. I've already tested the fan. It works great. I've got the positive wire run, and got my relay and everything wired up. The only thing I've got to wire up is just I got to finish up this ground wire for the fan and my 12 volt ignition wire. Now I made this wire here because I was thinking of running it to the coil here, but I don't really want to pull 12 volts away from the coil or the distributor, so I'll probably use this wire here, which I have a longer piece here, and run it around up into the fuse box. So that way, you know, I'll have 12 volts with ignition, and like the directions say here, it says it's a maroon wire going to the ignition switch, but there was not a maroon wire included with this. So just had to make my own, which is not a problem. But yeah, this one, it reaches over here just fine. But like I said, I don't really want to pull 12 volts away from my coil or my distributor. So I've changed my mind about this wire, and I'm going to run it up to the fuse block, or I may be able to tie in to my wipers, possibly. I'll check and see. I'll get my multimeter and check all those, and I may be able to just plug into one of them. But pretty happy with how everything came out. My probe electrode for my temperature control thermostat, I've stuck it in the radiator over here, and see, it goes in right there, and I just used a Phillips head screwdriver to push through and open up the fins in the radiator so that probe would fit in. And well, I've got the wire coming out of it, it can't back out, and it's in there pretty snug anyways. But the only thing I'm not really happy with is how this looks. I mean, I didn't have much choice. I could move the probe further over to this side and then take this and run it down and then back up, which would probably look a little better, but for now it'll be okay like this. I've got it zip tied here, and I've got it zip tied over there in a couple of spots, so it's not going to go anywhere. But anyways, back to this here. And before anybody says anything about this exposed positive being here, I've already thought about that. It's a possibility that something could get laid down here and short out. But it's the same possibility on the other side at the solenoid. But I think I'm going to make me a plastic cover to cover this, and come up and cover across the top of this, and just bolt it into the firewall. So that way it'll go from here to here. It'll come down here, but I'll leave my dial exposed, but it'll come up across and protect these wires. So that way I won't have to worry about it. But then I'll still have access to my dial and to my relay. And on the ground, I took a bolt, put a washer on, put on the wire coming from the relay, put another washer, put on the wire coming from the fan, put on another washer, put on the main wire coming from the battery, and I put on a washer and a nut and tightened them up on that bolt. And then I took and put the bolts through the bottom hole of the circuit breaker, and then it runs straight through the firewall, and I put a nut on the other side up inside the fender well and tightened it up good. So that's not going anywhere. All these are tight. So like I said, everything's done except I'm just about to solder this up here in a minute, and I've got to run my ignition wire to my temperature control. So I'll show you how I'm doing this. Now this little torch here, I don't remember where I got it, but it just snaps together and it works off of these little disposable lighters. Just have to pull that cover off, put this little rubber tube onto the nozzle, and then put it in here like that. And this switch right here, when you push that down, that pushes your button on your lighter so it will release the gas. And this one's got a striker here, so once you turn this on, you push the button, it pops and sparks here and lights it. But this is messed up, so I've just been using another lighter to light it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to heat this up, and then I'm going to put some flux on there. This is some old flux. It's been around here, ever since I can remember. My dad was a plumber, and he kept this stuff all the time. There's no telling how old this bottle is. I mean, tell you one thing about how old it is, there's no barcode on it. I mean, if you notice, just about everything nowadays has a barcode on it to scan at the register. And this doesn't have a barcode. So, I don't know if it came in a multi-pack where it didn't need a barcode. Barcode was on the box or what. But anyways, I know this has been here for a long time. And it's still good. It works just fine. It just takes a little bit. Don't take much at all. After I get the flux on there, I'll get melted and liquefied into the wire in this end here real good. Then I'll start back to heating it up, and I'll start feeding my solder into the flame. Once I get a drop there, I'm going to keep it hot until I see that drop absorb into the wires here. And you can tell when it absorbs and it sticks. If it's not hot enough, it's just going to look like a little BB sitting up there above the metal. But once it gets hot enough and it sticks good, it'll spread out and be real flat and even. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So, light my torch. I could have used a lighter in my pocket, but this one was laying here already. Alright, so I'll get this wire out of the way. Now this is just to catch the excess solder that drips off. Get my flux out of here, and get my flux out here. Now, what little bit's coating on the brush, there's plenty what I need. Just heat this up, brush it a little bit, and you can heat it up and just kind of burn the hairs on your brush a little bit. But you want to get a pretty good drop on there. Get your solder. Heating it up good and hot. You see how the solder is absorbing in there. It's not beating up and sitting on the surface. Now then, I messed up and got it way up in there. Okay, melted it out then. Okay, I cleaned it out. Now then, just double check and make sure that's good right here. Okay. Try not to breathe in that smoke coming off that plastic. It's not good for you. Now this torch, like I said, it's messed up. You turn the switch off and it's still got a flame coming. Ouch. And I just pop it loose so it releases that trigger of the lighter. But watch this nozzle, it's going to be hot. Because I just touched it just in a little bit and it hurt. It's hot. Now I put a heat shrink on here and I accidentally got it hot. So it's kind of stuck there, but it'll be okay. It's just the ground. Now where it's going in that harness for the fan, it's going to be right next to the hot wire for the fan, but it shouldn't hurt anything. I couldn't find a harness to fit in here. So I'm just plugging it in with these types of plugs here. Now then, since I messed up my heat shrink here, I'm going to put on a larger one, slide over this and then shrink it with a cigarette lighter. It only takes just a couple minutes for it to cool off enough where you can touch it. Slide that over. And I want it to come all the way up to the edge of the connection here. So that way the sides are protected. The center of it is the only place it has to make contact. Now then we'll just shrink this on here. And there you go. And that's how I soldered the ends on my main wires here too. So now then, plug it in. That should be fine now. Alright, now then, got to figure out where 12-volt ignition is going to come from. Now I could, in theory, run my 12-volt ignition wire to here, give it 12 volts all the time. That just means the fan would still work if the engine's hot enough with the key off. Which, a lot of cars do that now, but I mean, it doesn't really help a lot. All it's doing is cooling the coolant in the radiator and not the engine while it's off. I would rather not have the fan running if the key's not on. So I've got to find a place to pull 12 volts from. So I need to hook up my battery and get my multimeter here. Start checking some connections here. Okay. Now I'm going to try and find 12 volts up here. I'm going to first try the neutral safety switch. I'm going to turn the switch on, check for 12 volts in these two empty ports here. And then if I find 12 volts in one of these two, I'll turn the switch off, check it again. And if I'm not getting 12 volts, then that's where I want to tie this wire to. So, let me turn on the switch. That switch is on. Let's see here, I'll try this one here first. Okay, I'm getting 12 volts right there. into this top one here. So I'm going to turn the switch off. Check it again. Okay, switch is off. Put it in there. Okay, I think that's what I want. So that's what I'm going to tie in. The top port here in the neutral safety switch. Okay, find me another plug here. Now this is just another plug like this. That's all I use for my jumper to bypass my neutral safety switch to make the starter work like it's supposed to. And this one, yes it will. It's pretty snug, but that's what we want. It will slide in there next to it. So what I need is this top one here. And cut a little excess so I can possibly tie into this wire for something else in the future if I need to. Okay, I just split that wire there. And this little package of heat shrinks here I got from one of the Amazon return stores, so I'm sure you can order them on Amazon. And this is handy. They already come pre-cut, multiple different sizes. And I use these all the time. They're really, really handy. So you see what I'm doing? I just folded this wire over because we're not going to be using this one. Fold it over, slide this over it, and then I'll heat shrink it on. This will keep possibly grounding out, and then if I do decide I need to tie into that in the future for some reason, then all I've got to do is just cut off the heat shrink and tie into it. And then shrink it and clip off the excess. Okay, now then, just cut off the excess right here, because all this, there's nothing there. Just like that. Now that clipped off, I'm going to shrink it a little more. Just take off that sharp edge. And may not look like it, but it is protected because the insulation of the wire is just folded over right there inside that hole. That's what I need. Now then, strip off some bare wire here. Put up my heat shrinks before they get knocked off and spilled. And now I anticipated doing this wiring work a few nights ago. So I made this. I just made this up quick because I just need something to hold wires. Now they do make tools with like some little alligator clips that'll hold wires and everything for you. But, I mean, why buy it when you can make something like that and that's all you need? And this is actually better than alligator clips because that wood is not going to bite into the insulation depending on how strong the alligator clips are. But I'm going to use this for as long as it'll stay together. I can use it in the interior when I go to working on the wiring inside, because there's a few wires I know that I've got to splice or solder together, and that'll hold them in place until I can get it done. It's just a popsicle stick or craft stick. You can buy them in Walmart in the craft section. And I glued 2 paper clips to it. So now I can clip this onto my wire here and clip it onto the other piece here and that'll hold them together so I can solder this in between here. And now I can even clamp something here to clamp it somewhere else to hold it, but I shouldn't need to. I'm going to put down my, it's just a piece of aluminum here. It's been laying around the shop here forever, and I'm just going to use it to keep solder from dripping on anything. Make sure you can see me here. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to solder these wires directly together. I've got them kind of meshed together a little bit, but once I solder them, they won't go anywhere. Now, as far as a heat shrink, since there's nothing on the other end of this wire, I can just put the heat shrink on and slide it all the way up. But if I already had a terminal on the other end, I would want to put my heat shrink on before I start my soldering here. Okay. Start getting it hot. Get my flux here. Solder here. Okay. Light my torch. Want to get it getting hot. Put it to this side so you can see what I'm doing. I've got a bubble. We've got a bead solder already on there. You just want to heat it up till that bead absorbs into the wire. I'm going to put just a little more on here just to be sure. Okay. Nice little torch. Bad thing about it, it's hard to get it shut off sometimes. But I have some new ones ordered. They should be here in a few days. Alright. Now then, that is soldered together pretty good. And it's already cooled off enough to where I can touch it. Now, as you can see, we got a tight connection. Not going anywhere. Now I'm just going to put a heat shrink on. Now, since I didn't put one on to start with, I've got to run it all the way from the other end, which is not a problem. There it is. Just let it cool off a little bit. And now I have the switch off, so I can go ahead and plug this in. And I know I've got 12 volts here now. And now, turn my switch on, and I should get 12 volts to this here now. I want to put this somewhere it's not touching anything, so I can test to be sure. Right, so now, my battery is still hooked up. Turn my switch on. And my voltmeter on. And my electrodes. And maybe a good ground here. And touch the wire here. And there we have it. Alright, now my switch is off and the battery's unhooked, so I'm not worried about this touching or grounding out on anything. Okay. Now then, everything is wired. Now this looks a lot better than just a oddball wire run around here. And twist ties are temporary. I have some zip ties that I will be securing this a lot better. Now, if you guys will remember, the battery box I have cut up to use pieces for the center cap a few videos back. This is the lid to it, and still got the hardware in here, which I can put that there for now. But I'm thinking this section here should be enough to stick out over this. I can just drill into this, drill me some holes into the firewall right here. Alright, so now let's see here. Yeah, the width of this section here should be enough down to about here. Cut out the section here, up here, back to here. Cut all this out, down here, back to here. Alright, so I cut this out of that battery box, and there is my cover. So everything protected, help keep anything from accidentally getting shorted, and I still have access to my control knob here. My wires on top of here are covered, protected. I just need to drill some holes through here and secure it to the firewall, and that will work. I just need to get my utility knife and clean up these cuts a little bit and these edges, and it'll look pretty good, I think. Just got it on here with some self-tapping screws. Got it covering the circuit breaker. These wires up here, I mean, you can still see them there, but I mean, nothing's going to drop down from the fender up here onto it. Okay, so I got my twist ties replaced with zip ties now, so that's not going anywhere. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this episode. I could get more done tonight, but I'm tired. I was working on my neighbor's lawnmower. I'm dirty, sore, but I did get a lot done. I was hoping to have the cooling system done in this video, but it's not going to happen. So I'll try and have it done for my next week's video. I may just start posting a video every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks in the future, because springtime coming up, I got yard work and stuff to do. But I still have a lot of big plans for the Mustang. Still hope to have it road ready by the end of April, because there's a cruise in coming up in my town, and I want to take the Mustang. I've already gotten a VIN inspection form, so when I get it road ready, I can have the VIN inspected, have the car checked, and be able to get it registered. So it's going to do it for this video. Appreciate y'all watching, and y'all take care.